I stopped introducing my boss as my boss the day he told me it made him look weak. That should have been my first red flag, not some deep leadership insight. He pulled me aside after a client meeting, fingers digging into my shoulder like we were old friends, and hissed it through his teeth. Stop introducing me as your manager. It makes me look like I need you to validate me. If you've ever wondered what it's like to work for a man who's terrified of the one word that actually describes his job, this is what it feels like from the inside. I'm Grant, early 30s, project coordinator at a mid-sized software company. I'm the guy who makes sure the promises in the slide deck don't explode in our faces 3 months later. Richard, my boss, or whatever he prefers to be called, runs client delivery. On paper, he's a LinkedIn success story. Fast promotions, conference photos, a bio full of transformational leadership. In person, he's hungrier. He walks like every hallway is a runway, drops one joke, one humble brag, and the room tilts toward him. My first week, he paraded me around the floor. "This is Grant," he told everyone. "He's my guy, my right hand." I didn't yet know my guy meant the person I'll throw under the bus while I smile and shake hands. I grew up in a house where "don't make a fuss" was basically religion. So when he asked me to stay late to finish decks he was presenting the next morning, I stayed. When he took credit for those decks in front of the director and my name never came up, I smiled and told myself that's just how it works. He's management, I'm not. First client call. Manufacturing company out of Chicago, a lot of money on the line. I'd done the prep, built the agenda, written the talking points. At the start of the call, I did what felt like basic respect. "Good afternoon, everyone," I said. "I'm Grant, project coordinator. With me is Richard, my manager." He laughed, quick, sharp, too loud in my headphones. "Let's just say colleague," he cut in, smiling into the webcam. "Titles are so stiff, you know?" The call went on. We landed it. Afterward, he crooked a finger at me and walked to the little focus room by the kitchen. No door, just enough distance that people could pretend not to listen. "Hey, can we talk about intros?" he said, leaning on the table like a coach. "Sure," I said. Did I mess something up? He gave me that professional smile he uses when the decision's already made. "Just don't introduce me as your manager," he said. "It makes me look like I need you to validate me." I stared at him, sure I'd misheard. "What?" He repeated it slower, like he was explaining a concept. "Stop introducing me as your manager. It sounds like you're vouching for me. Like I can't stand in the room on my own. Just say Richard from delivery, or Richard from our team. People can feel hierarchy. We don't need to spell it out." I shifted my notebook in my hands. "I wasn't trying to validate you," I said. "I was just telling them who you are. You told me my first week to establish chain of responsibility. Build trust." For a second the charm dropped out of his face. "Yeah, and I'm telling you now, I don't like the dynamic it creates," he said. "It makes it sound like I'm above you. Then they start talking to me instead of you, and then you feel like I'm swooping in. It's messy. I don't want that." He packaged his own discomfort like he was doing me a favor. "I want us to look like partners in front of clients," he added. "Side by side. I don't need you advertising that you report to me." "In reality, I do," slipped out before I could swallow it. He laughed softly. "In reality, yeah," he said. "But reality's for inside the team. Outside, it's optics. Optics matter. You get that, right? You know that feeling when every part of you wants to argue, but you can already see the email chain if you do?" I swallowed it. "Sure," I said. "No more manager, just Richard from delivery." "Good man," he said, clapping my shoulder. "See? This is why you're my guy." I stood there listening to the hum of the fridge through the wall and the muffled keyboard noise outside, feeling something sour settle under my ribs. On paper, nothing outrageous had happened. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cursed. If you wrote down his words, they'd look reasonable, but that sentence wouldn't leave my head. "It makes me look like I need you to validate me." Driving home with the radio off, it kept looping. In the shower. In bed. Staring at the ceiling fan while my wife breathed steady beside me. He wasn't just uncomfortable with a title. He was uncomfortable with being seen as responsible for me at all. The next week, we had another new client call. Different industry, same script. "Good morning," I began when everyone joined. "I'm Grant from the delivery team. With me is Richard, also from delivery." I left it at that. Richard jumped in with a joke about juggling projects. They laughed. We moved on. He didn't correct me this time, but when I mentioned he handles most of our client escalations, his jaw twitched like I'd said something indecent. That's when I started paying attention properly. He loved the benefits of authority. The praise, the last word, the way everyone looked to him when meetings got tense. But he hated anything that made that authority traceable. Titles, org charts, clear lines, anything you could point to later and say, "This was your call." Validation was fine as long as it flowed only one way. So I adjusted. I stopped saying manager, stopped saying handles, started introducing him exactly how he wanted to be seen. Just another guy from delivery who somehow always ended up at the head of the table. I thought that was the compromise. Change a word, keep the peace, pick your battles. But moving that one word didn't just change how I spoke about him. It changed how he started speaking about me. You don't notice erosion while it's happening. You just wake up one day, and the shoreline you trusted isn't there anymore. After I stopped calling him my manager, Richard didn't thank me. He didn't relax. He didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he started acting like the hierarchy he was so allergic to suddenly didn't apply in the other direction either. At first, it was little things, small shifts in tone, corrections that weren't corrections, just ways to remind me the air in the room bent around him. One morning, I sent out a status update to a client before our weekly sync, a routine 2-minute email. I'd written it 100 times. 5 minutes later, he came to my desk with his hands in his pockets, leaning in like he was sharing a secret. "Next time," he murmured, "loop me in first. It just looks cleaner when communication comes through me." "It was a status update," I said. "I know," he replied with that smile that wasn't a smile. "Just optics." That word again. Optics. The corporate equivalent of rearranging furniture and calling it structural integrity. The next week, he started forwarding my emails to people with notes like, "Per my guidance," and "as discussed with me," even when we hadn't discussed a single thing. I'd draft a project outline. He'd skim it, copy-paste the exact same thing into a separate message, and send it upward like it originated in his skull. Eventually, I stopped feeling annoyed and started feeling stupid, like I was helping him build a house I wasn't allowed to live in. But the worst shifts weren't on email. They were in meetings. We were deep in delivery for a logistics client, and I was presenting an update on a workflow issue I'd solved after 3 late nights. Midway through explaining the fix, Richard cut me off with a laugh. "What Grant means is that he emphasized the word like it cost money, came up with a more elegant approach than the original plan." He hadn't touched that issue. He hadn't even opened the file. My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice level. "Actually, the alternate routing logic..." He put a hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm. "Teamwork, buddy. No need to break it apart like that." The clients nodded, unaware they were watching a small theft in real time. After the call, I stayed behind to close out notes. Richard lingered in the doorway. "You jumped in a little hard there," he said. "I was clarifying who did what." "And that matters why?" He tilted his head. "We look stronger when we're unified. You don't need individual credit. You get paid either way." "I like people to know what's accurate," I said. "Accuracy doesn't win projects," he replied. "Confidence does." He said it like it was wisdom, not justification. I didn't argue. It wouldn't have mattered. He'd decided the story, and I was a supporting character in it. But that day wasn't the breaking point. That came 2 weeks later, when the quarterly performance digest went out. The digest is simple. A 1-page email from senior leadership highlighting wins across teams. I wasn't expecting a medal, but I knew my name might appear once or twice. I'd pulled extra hours all month. It wasn't ego, it was just math. I opened the digest at my desk, sipping coffee. I read it once, then again, slower. Richard's name was in it 4 times. Mine wasn't in it at all. Not even as a bullet under a team mention. Not even tucked inside a sentence. Nothing. But the kicker, the part that made my hands shake very slightly, was a line under the Client Success Spotlight section. Special thanks to Richard M. for designing and implementing the alternate routing solution that saved the Chicago account timeline. My solution, my fix, my nights. And there it was, under his name, narrated like a fairy tale about a brave, innovative leader. I stared at the screen long enough for the coffee to go cold. Richard walked by behind me, pretended not to notice what I was reading, then backtracked, leaned down, and tapped the monitor. "Great, right?" he said casually. "Big win for us." "For you," I corrected. He blinked. Just once, as if surprised I'd spoken out loud. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "These things get written quick. They don't always get details perfect. You forwarded my outline to the director last week, with your name on it." He shrugged. "Chain of command. It's literally my job to communicate up. I'm allowed to package things." "Package?" I repeated. "It's politics, Grant." His tone softened in that condescending way he used when he wanted to be the wise mentor. "You'll get it eventually. You're talented. But you still think truth sells itself." "It should. But it doesn't," he said, patting my shoulder. "Look, don't get in your head. You're valuable. You're my foundation guy. You handle the details so I can handle the big picture. That's partnership." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's not partnership. That's cover." He paused, expression flattening for a microsecond. Then he smiled. "You're stressed," he said. "Take a walk. Don't make this weird." Then he walked away, humming, like he hadn't just rewritten a month of my life in a sentence. That afternoon, while updating a timeline sheet, something inside me finally clicked. Not loudly, not angrily, quiet, like a small gear sliding into place. I'd been trying to protect the relationship, the job, the team, him, but he wasn't protecting anything but the illusion of his own brilliance. For the first time in months, I sat still and let myself feel the full weight of it. He didn't just want me to stop calling him my manager. He wanted me to stop existing anywhere he needed credit. And I didn't know it yet, but that day would cost him everything. Because that was the moment, the exact, quiet, unremarkable moment when I stopped assuming he would ever change. And that night, I stopped being the hero. The thing about quiet decisions is that no one notices them until the consequences start making noise. I didn't announce anything. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even change how I spoke to him the next day. I just stopped assuming Richard's version of the story was the real one. And once you stop assuming, you start seeing. The first change was microscopic. I created a folder on my desktop, buried under 2 decoy names. Into it went the email where he told me to loop him in for optics, then the one where he forwarded my outline as if he'd written it, screenshots of Slack messages, time-stamped files, versions of decks he'd revised that were untouched except for removing my initials from the footer. I didn't collect them because I wanted revenge. I collected them because for the first time, I believed I might need them. Then something happened that confirmed it. We were prepping a major quarterly review. High stakes, executive level, the kind of meeting where people suddenly pretend to remember your name if things go well. I'd built the slide deck from zero, modeling projections, writing analysis, double-checking data points. Richard added 3 bullet points and a clip art icon. The morning of the review, he walked into the office earlier than usual, wearing his leadership blazer, instead of the shirt sleeves he liked to act humble in. "We'll run through the deck one more time," he said. "Sure." We opened it. My name was gone from the intro slide. His name stood alone. I didn't react immediately. I just scrolled, slowly, slide by slide, confirming every footnote, every chart, every reference to our team had been rewritten into Richard's delivery strategy, Richard's recommendations, Richard's findings. "So you want to explain this?" I said. He didn't even blink. "You know execs. They don't want clutter. My name is Clutter?" "You're overthinking it," he said. "This is just how it's done. Executives want one voice, one decision maker. You'll get plenty of credit on the back end." "The back end of what?" I asked. "My own work being repackaged to make you look indispensable." His jaw twitched, the same twitch from months ago, but this time he didn't bother hiding it. "If you're going to turn this into a tantrum, don't," he said quietly. "You're too old to make career-limiting moves." Career-limiting moves. That was the first open threat he ever made. And ironically, it freed me more than anything else. Because threats only work when you think the other person cares about the world you're being threatened with. We ran through the meeting. He delivered the deck like he was reading a poem he'd written. I watched the executives nod at slides I'd lost sleep over. The director even clapped him on the shoulder afterward. "Great work, Richard," she said. "Finally some clarity in this mess." He beamed. "Thank you. Grant helped with some of the smaller pieces." Some pieces. Smaller. Driving home that night, I didn't feel rage. Rage is hot, wild, messy. What I felt was surgical. Cold. Entirely controlled. I started a new document, a timeline. Every instance of credit theft. Every assignment misrepresented. Every deliverable misattributed. Dates, evidence, screenshots, thread links, file comparisons. A chain so airtight it could hold up a building. I didn't intend to use it. Not yet. Not unless he forced my hand. He forced it 3 days later. We were on a call with the Chicago client, reviewing implementation metrics. The client praised the routing logic we used last month, my work, and Richard jumped in with a laugh. "Yeah, that was a tricky one," he said. "My idea was rough at first, but once I cleaned up the logic, the team executed great." I looked at him, not because I was shocked he'd lied. At this point, that was expected, but because he said, "once I cleaned it up," meaning he'd started believing his own version of events. And then it happened. He slipped. He said, "I wrote the initial algorithm on the flight back, but the team polished it." He'd never written a single line, not a draft, not an outline, nothing. The client asked a question about a specific decision point in the logic, a place where I'd built a conditional fallback because their system sometimes froze under heavy load. Richard froze, just half a second, but enough. The client repeated the question. Richard looked to me. I answered, calm, step by step, perfectly, because it was my work. When the call ended, he closed the conference room door. "What the hell was that?" he said sharply. "What?" I replied. "You jumped in like you were trying to embarrass me." "You couldn't answer," I said. "I'm not going to let the client think we're incompetent." His eyes narrowed. "You're starting to get a little full of yourself, aren't you?" "No," I said. "I'm just done pretending you're doing my job for me." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary silence. It was heavy. It had shape. Edges. Then he stepped close. Too close. "Be careful," he whispered. "People who think they're irreplaceable usually aren't." I didn't step back. "Neither are people who fake competence long enough," I said. His nostrils flared, but he said nothing. Just brushed past me and left the room. That afternoon, I sent an email to the director. Subject line, documentation for review. Delivery process. Inconsistencies, no drama. No accusations. Just a calm message saying I'd noticed discrepancies in credit attribution, communication gaps, and potential misreporting that affected both morale and accuracy. I attached the timeline, the evidence, the chain. I didn't copy Richard. I didn't mention it to him. I didn't change my behavior. 2 days passed, then 3. Richard was unusually quiet. He didn't hover, didn't correct my sentences, didn't peek at my monitor pretending to check in. Then on the 4th morning, he walked into the office with a bright, brittle smile. "Quick huddle at 10, he said to the team, but his eyes didn't meet mine. At 9:30, I saw a calendar invite pop up. Director wants to speak privately. No subject. No notes. I stepped into the conference room at 10 sharp. The director sat at the table. HR beside her. A folder in front of them. Richard wasn't in the room. The director folded her hands. "Grant," she said, "thank you for sending the documentation last week." My heart didn't race. It didn't have to. And then there was silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The director didn't rush. She let the room settle first. The kind of silence where you can hear the building's HVAC clicking in the vents. HR opened the folder, papers, a printed timeline, screenshots, my email. "First," the director said, "I want to be clear. What you sent was comprehensive. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was responsible." I nodded once. I didn't trust my voice yet. "We've been monitoring Richard's performance for a while," she continued. "Not in terms of delivery output, that's always been strong on paper, but in terms of the pattern behind it. And what you documented aligns with concerns we couldn't fully confirm until now." HR slid one sheet toward me. "Effective immediately," she said. "Richard is being placed on administrative leave pending an internal audit." I didn't smile. I didn't exhale dramatically. If anything, I sat straighter, like someone had just taken weight off my spine instead of handing me a reward. "We want to offer you something," the director said. "A temporary leadership assignment. Acting delivery manager. The team already sees you as the point of stability. We'd like that formalized during this transition." My pulse didn't speed up. It just steadied, like a metronome finding center. "I can take it," I said. "I expected you would." She closed the folder. "We'll make an announcement in 20 minutes on the all-hands call. You don't need to say anything. Just be present." I stepped out of the conference room, feeling nothing explosive, just a quiet clarity spreading through me like the first deep breath after stepping out of a cramped space. At 10:30, the team gathered around laptops, some at their desks, a few standing in the aisle. People joked, tapped pens, finished bites of breakfast. Richard wasn't there. The director's face appeared on the screen. Calm, professional. "Good morning, everyone. I'll keep this brief." The chatter died instantly. "As of today," she said, "Richard will be out of office while we conduct an internal process review. Grant will be serving as acting delivery manager effective immediately." No gasps, no theatrics. Just a ripple, a subtle shifting of posture around the room, the kind people make when puzzle pieces finally click. Jenna from Analytics turned in her seat and mouthed, "About time." No one looked shocked. That was the part that hit me hardest. Nobody was surprised. They were just relieved someone finally said the quiet part out loud. After the call, people approached my desk one by one. A pat on the back, a congrats, man, a good luck, a few, "You deserve it." All quick, all understated. The kind of small office kindness that means more than people realize. Around noon, Richard finally showed up. He didn't walk in like he usually did, chest forward, confident, loud. He slipped inside quietly, eyes scanning for something solid to grab onto. He avoided looking at me. He went straight to his office, stayed there for 5 minutes, then left carrying nothing but his phone and his keycard. He paused at the elevator. I don't know why I expected him to say something. Apologize, accuse, justify. Anything. He didn't. He stepped inside, the doors closed, and that was it. No final speech. No last attempt to reclaim the narrative. Just a man walking into a quiet elevator with nothing left to perform for. The rest of the day moved normally. Meetings, emails, a budget check. The kind of work that never cares about personal chaos. I spent the afternoon rewriting rotational schedules and cleaning up the mess he'd left behind. Undocumented processes, misaligned expectations, half-finished outlines he'd pretended were strategic blueprints. By 5, the office had gone soft and dim. People filtered out. Keyboards went quiet. Coffee cups sat abandoned near monitors. A normal Tuesday, the kind where life starts folding itself back into order. I stayed a little longer, adjusting a rollout plan he'd delayed for weeks. At 6:12 p.m., I closed my laptop. Not with ceremony, not with satisfaction plastered on my face, just with a clean final click that echoed a little too nicely in the empty space. I grabbed my jacket, nodded at the janitor, and stepped outside. The air felt different, not better, not lighter, just mine. On the walk to the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A new email. I didn't check it right away. I let it sit until I reached the car. Then I opened it. It was from HR. Please confirm your availability tomorrow to discuss permanent role restructuring. I leaned against the car door and let the evenings settle around me. A month ago, I'd been letting Richard rearrange reality because I didn't want conflict. I wanted peace. And for a long time, I confused peace with silence, with not pushing back, with shrinking myself to make someone else comfortable. Turns out peace isn't silence. Peace is not having to rehearse your reactions in your head before speaking. Peace is knowing no one is rewriting your work while calling it mentorship. Peace is walking to your car after a long day and realizing your life doesn't feel like someone else's stage anymore. When I got home, I made dinner. Something simple, pasta, and a pan of vegetables. I sat at my kitchen table, the window cracked just enough to let in the evening breeze. I ate slowly. No phone, no tension, no pretending. After dinner, I wrote myself a note on a sticky pad, something small for the fridge. You did the hard thing quietly. I stuck it next to a magnet and poured myself a glass of water. The house felt good, still, steady. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I was finally here,